It's always been sort of a world within itself. You know, the very word asylum, we now associate it with old Gothic movies of horrible things happening, you know, the asylum is a, you know, old rickety building on a hill, and you don't go there. It was founded in 1841, essentially, and for the next 3 or 4 years, Dr. David Cooper was the chief administrator. He was an advocate of what they called the moral treatment. And by moral treatment, he meant basically you treat people through humane ways and personal ways and ways of, you know, moving them to health. They didn't want to take patients or people who were mentally slow because they felt they weren't treatable. That if you're born with a low IQ or with those kind of issues, there's no cure. What they wanted to do was take what we would call schizophrenics or people with, you know, paranoia, those kind of disorders, I'm using modern terms, and those were people they could help. I think Thomas Green was amazingly effective in building, expanding the facility, in building new structures to house the patients, his ability to lobby the legislature for funds, his reports, and it always, his main focus for him was building, building, building. I mean, he had his own regimen, but he just knew they were short of space and he needed more staff, and he really, Green was, and you know, as you may know, there's a building, it's in bad shape now, but the Green Building is named for him. His life was centered at this place. And in terms of amassing the statistics and the data necessary to try to persuade people to fund it. And also still to try to keep it a little bit limited in terms of who they could accept. But then when Dr. Green, and this is not to belittle Dr. Green at all, he was terrific. And did his best to try to keep the institution on track. But in the later 19th century, all these safeguards started to break down, and the legislature managed to open up the facility. You could get in there and be admitted more easily. So they began to get the kind of patients that they really didn't want initially. And it started to grow, of course, just exponentially. It just got overpopulated, you know, and it was always the struggle and the battle they fought. Not enough people, not enough staff, not enough trained staff for the ever burgeoning prison population. There was reason to fear being sent to Milledgeville. They were understaffed, there was a lot of brutality. I mean, there were just horror stories abound.
In terms of mental health, I mean, this state's Milledgeville, I think, began, back in the 19th century as kind of the repository for people with mental illness and other people who were described as mental defectives, whatever, and I'm using obviously quotes around that, and also even people with epilepsy were sent to Milledgeville over the years. And being a state institution, it was the only one out there, and it went to a population of 10,000 patients at some time in the 1950s, I believe. And so, so the state was probably one of the only places where you could get that type of mental health care. While the census of the hospitals and the number of people the hospitals served was going up, the funding was going down at the same time. And the state's own report on this showed that a lot of people we had one of the highest rates in the country in terms of people cycling in and out of the hospital. You know, they'd go in and be there for a couple of days and go out, and then they'd be readmitted within 30 days of their discharge. And that was one of the problems, is people were going in, They weren't getting the care they needed to get stabilized, and then they were being turned loose, basically, some of them back on the streets. And they'd cycle back in. There were no community services available to people. Let's get people out of institutions. Let's get them served where they live, where their families live, and it's kind of like night and day. The difference between the original agreement and the agreement now, which calls for people with developmental disabilities to not be admitted into hospitals anymore, and the rest, and the others that were there, to have them find community services. And for people with mental illness, there's much more plans for supported housing, for employment opportunities, for crisis teams that work in the community to help people when they're in crisis. It's, from all accounts, it's a groundbreaking settlement. I think the state is realizing, or has realized, the idea that you can treat somebody a whole lot more effectively for a whole lot less money outside of an institution. There is some concern that if everybody's out in the community in a apartment or a group home or a personal care home, there's some concern about, is the state going to be effectively watching what happens to these folks over time? You know, with our budget crunch, that's a real legitimate issue, I think. But on the other hand, you see a lot of people who are excited about the new opportunities for people.
My name is Katie Whipple, and I'm the Creative Arts Coordinator for Creative Expression Studio. We are a creative arts program that's part of the Life Enrichment Center. And the Life Enrichment Center is a nonprofit here in Milledgeville, Georgia, that supports people and adults with developmental disabilities. Music therapy and the arts and just the whole aspect of that brings so much more to a person's quality of life. And the trends in healthcare right now have really grown from just supporting a person's basic needs, moving beyond just, you know, finding a good roof over somebody's head, providing more than just the basic needs, providing a good quality of life. And to do that, you really want to be a part of the community. As Central State Hospital continues to move people from the institution and into the community, one of the problems is that people are just literally just in the community, that they're not part of the community. So the arts provides an avenue for people to really be a part of the community, to belong to the community, to give back to the community, rather than just being geographically located within one's community, but to really be a part of what's going on. Now, probably half of the people that we serve live in a group home and have come from Central State Hospital within the last 5 years. So we work a lot with people who are still dealing with some of the institutional issues from just living in an institution for 20 years of your life. So our facility has grown. I mean, it's probably doubled in capacity just because of the changes that Central State has made. And they're going to keep, you know, having more and more people transition from the hospital into the community, and they're going to need services. So we'll probably just continue to grow. But really, at the end of the day, it's providing just a better quality of life for that person, and in turn, that relationship, I think they provide a better quality of life for you. You're more of a human being.
All the states, what I'm told from people that watch this stuff, is other states and are watching Georgia and seeing what happens here, looking at this as a model for the rest of the country.
One surviving institution in this town since its creation. We're no longer the capital. So many things have come and gone, but the one enduring thing, even though it's on its last legs, has been the asylum. Central State Hospital, the sanatorium, all the different names it's had over the years.